Have you ever felt like an outsider, wondering if you'd ever truly belong? Or maybe you've faced tough times, unsure if things would ever get better. If so, you're not alone, and the story we're about to dive into might just be exactly what you need to hear. Let's talk about Ruth, one of the most incredible women in the Bible. Her story is like a blockbuster movie. It's got everything: tragedy, love, bravery, and an ending that'll blow your mind. Picture this: Israel is going through some rough times. There's not enough food to go around, people are struggling, and it seems like everyone's forgotten about God. It's in this mess that we meet Ruth, a young woman from Moab, who's about to go on the journey of a lifetime. Now you might be thinking, why should I care about some woman who lived thousands of years ago? Well, hold on to your seats, because Ruth's story is about to show us how God can take our messiest situations and turn them into something beautiful. We're talking rags to riches, outsider to insider, and hopelessness to a legacy that changed the world. So are you ready to discover how a foreign widow became one of the most important women in the Bible? Want to find out what her story can teach us about faith, love, and never giving up? Then stick around, because we're about to unpack the amazing story of Ruth, and trust me, it's going to be one wild ride. Get ready to see how God works in mysterious ways, how one person's faithfulness can change history, and how love can conquer all obstacles. This isn't just some dusty old tale. It's a story that's going to challenge you, inspire you, and maybe even change the way you see your own life. So let's jump in and discover why Ruth's story has captivated people for thousands of years, and why it's still incredibly relevant for us today. Our story begins in the land of Moab, a nation with a complex history of conflict and kinship with Israel. The Moabites, descendants of Lot, were often at odds with their Israelite neighbors. It's in this foreign land that we first encounter Ruth, a young woman likely raised in the polytheistic traditions of her people. The Bible doesn't provide extensive details about Ruth's early life, but we can infer that she was raised in a culture vastly different from the monotheistic faith of Israel. Imagine a young Ruth, perhaps curious about the beliefs of her Israelite neighbors, yet firmly rooted in the customs of her own people. Enter Elimelech, a man from Bethlehem in Judah, who journeys to Moab with his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, seeking refuge from a severe famine. It's a desperate move, leaving the promised land for a foreign territory, but one driven by the basic need for survival. In time, Mahlon takes Ruth as his wife, while his brother Chilion marries another Moabite woman named Orpah. The Bible is silent on the details of Ruth and Mahlon's courtship and wedding, but we can imagine the cultural challenges they might have faced. A union between an Israelite and a Moabite was unconventional, to say the least. During their marriage, it's likely that Ruth was exposed to the faith of Israel. The book of Ruth later reveals her deep commitment to the God of Israel, suggesting that her time with Mahlon had a profound impact on her spiritual journey. However, their happiness was to be short-lived. In a tragic turn of events, Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi a widow in a foreign land. Then, in what must have been a devastating blow, both Mahlon and Chilion also pass away, leaving not one, but three widows: Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah. In ancient times, the plight of a widow was often desperate, but to be a widow in a foreign land was even more precarious. Ruth's world had been turned upside down, and the choices she would make next would alter the course of her life, and indeed, the course of history. The scene is set with profound grief and uncertainty. Three widows, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, stand at a crossroads, their futures hanging in the balance. The loss of their husbands has left them vulnerable in a society where a woman's security often depended on male protection and provision. Naomi, burdened by sorrow and perhaps feeling the weight of guilt for leaving her homeland, decides to return to Bethlehem. She's heard that the Lord has visited his people and ended the famine. With nothing left for her in Moab, she prepares for the journey back to Judah. In a moment of selfless love, Naomi urges her daughters-in-law to return to their mother's homes. She blesses them, saying, "May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Ruth 1:8. Naomi's words reveal the depth of affection that had grown between these women, transcending cultural barriers. What follows is one of the most poignant scenes in Scripture. Orpah, after much weeping, kisses Naomi goodbye and returns to her people. But Ruth clings to Naomi, refusing to leave her side. In face of Naomi's insistence, Ruth utters words that have echoed through the ages. "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go I will go, and where you lodge I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." Ruth 1:16-17. This declaration is more than just a pledge of loyalty to a mother-in-law. It's a profound statement of faith and commitment. Ruth is not only choosing to accompany Naomi, she's choosing to adopt Naomi's God, people, and way of life. She's leaving behind everything familiar, her homeland, her family, her gods, to venture into the unknown with Naomi. Ruth's decision is remarkable for its courage and selflessness. As a Moabite in Israel, she would likely face prejudice and hardship. Yet her love for Naomi and her newfound faith in the God of Israel compel her forward. This moment of decision showcases Ruth's extraordinary character, her loyalty, her bravery, and her willingness to sacrifice for love. In Ruth's pledge, we see a foreshadowing of the kind of commitment God desires from his people. Her words echo the covenant loyalty that God shows to Israel and that he calls Israel to show in return. Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi becomes a powerful metaphor for faithfulness to God himself. As Naomi and Ruth set out on the road to Bethlehem, they carry with them grief and uncertainty. But they also carry hope in the God who provides and in the strength of their bond. Little do they know that this journey is just the beginning of an incredible story of redemption and restoration. The road from Moab to Bethlehem stretches before Ruth and Naomi, a path spanning not just physical distance, but cultural and spiritual divides. This journey, likely around 50 miles, would have taken several days on foot, traversing rugged terrain and crossing the Jordan River. Imagine these two women, bonded by loss and love, making their way across the landscape. Naomi, older and grief-stricken, perhaps leaning on Ruth for support. And Ruth, stepping into a new world with each footfall, her commitment to Naomi and to the God of Israel guiding her forward. As they travel, we can envision the conversations they might have had. Perhaps Naomi shared stories of Bethlehem, of the God of Israel, and of the customs Ruth would need to learn. Maybe Ruth asked questions, eager to understand the faith she had chosen to embrace. This journey was not just a physical relocation, but a spiritual pilgrimage for Ruth. The Bible doesn't detail their journey, but we can imagine the challenges they faced. Two women traveling alone would have been vulnerable to dangers on the road. They likely relied on the hospitality of strangers for food and shelter. Every step would have been a testament to their faith and determination. As they neared Bethlehem, the landscape would have changed. The arid regions giving way to the more fertile hills of Judah. For Naomi, it was a bittersweet homecoming. For Ruth, it was stepping into a new world, filled with uncertainty but also possibility. Their arrival in Bethlehem causes quite a stir. The scripture tells us the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" Ruth 1:19. Naomi's response is telling, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." Ruth 1:20. Naomi's words reveal the depth of her pain and loss. She left Bethlehem full, with a husband and 2 sons, and returns empty save for her faithful daughter-in-law. Yet in her grief, Naomi still acknowledges God's sovereignty, referring to him as the Almighty. For Ruth, this moment of arrival must have been daunting. She stands beside her mother-in-law, a foreigner in a strange land, unknown and possibly unwelcome. yet she remains steadfast, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Their arrival in Bethlehem coincides with the beginning of the barley harvest, a detail that seems minor but will prove pivotal in the unfolding of their story. It's a sign of God's provision. They've come at a time when work and food might be available. As Ruth and Naomi settle into life in Bethlehem, they face an uncertain future. How will they survive? How will Ruth, a Moabite, be received by the people of Bethlehem? And how will God work in their circumstances to bring about his purposes? The stage is set for the next chapter in Ruth's extraordinary journey. Little does she know that her faithfulness and courage are about to open doors she could never have imagined. As the golden hues of the barley harvest paint the fields of Bethlehem, we find Ruth taking initiative to provide for herself and Naomi. The law of Moses made provision for the poor and foreigners, allowing them to glean in the fields, gathering leftover grain after the harvesters had passed through. Ruth, in her humility and diligence, sets out to take advantage of this opportunity. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Ruth 2.2. Ruth's words reveal her character: hard-working, humble, and willing to face potential rejection for the sake of survival. As Providence would have it, Ruth finds herself in the field of Boaz, a wealthy and influential man from the clan of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech. Boaz arrives from Bethlehem, greeting his harvesters with the blessing, "The Lord be with you." Their response, "The Lord bless you," gives us a glimpse into the godly character of Boaz and the atmosphere of his fields. It's in this setting that Boaz first notices Ruth. His inquiry about her identity leads to a glowing report from his foreman. She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. Ruth 2.67. Boaz, moved by Ruth's story and impressed by her work ethic, approaches her with unexpected kindness. He tells her to stay in his fields, ensures her safety, and even invites her to drink from the water jars when thirsty. Ruth, overwhelmed by this generosity, falls at his feet asking, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me a foreigner?" Ruth 2:10. Boaz's response is telling, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Ruth 2:11-12. This exchange reveals Boaz's godly character and his recognition of Ruth's faith and loyalty. He sees beyond her status as a Moabite and values her for her actions and devotion to the God of Israel. The day continues with Boaz showing extraordinary kindness to Ruth. He invites her to eat with his workers, personally serves her roasted grain, and instructs his men to intentionally leave extra grain for her to glean. By the end of the day, Ruth has gathered an ephah of barley, an amount that would have taken days under normal circumstances. When Ruth returns home and recounts the day's events to Naomi, her mother-in-law is quick to recognize God's hand at work. She explains that Boaz is a close relative, one of their family redeemers. This information sets the stage for the next phase of their story as Naomi begins to see hope for Ruth's future. This encounter in the fields is more than just a fortunate coincidence. It's a testament to God's providential care, working behind the scenes to bring Ruth and Boaz together. It's also a beautiful picture of God's law of gleaning in action, providing for the poor and the foreigner. As the sun sets on this pivotal day, Ruth and Naomi have newfound hope. Little do they know that this is just the beginning of a greater plan unfolding, a plan that will not only secure their future, but play a crucial role in the lineage of Israel's greatest king and ultimately the Messiah himself. With the knowledge that Boaz is a close relative and potential redeemer, Naomi's mind begins to work. She sees an opportunity not just for survival, but for Ruth's long-term security and happiness. In this, we see Naomi's love for Ruth and her wisdom in understanding the customs of Israel. Naomi says to Ruth, "My daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for." Ruth 3:1. This statement reveals Naomi's heart. She's not thinking of herself, but of Ruth's future. It's a beautiful reciprocation of the loyalty Ruth showed her. The plan Naomi devises is bold and unconventional by our modern standards, but it aligns with the customs of the time. She instructs Ruth, "Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." Ruth 3:3-4. This plan is fraught with risk. Ruth as a foreigner could be misunderstood or taken advantage of. Yet it's also a plan that respects the customs of levirate marriage and redemption in Israel. Naomi is essentially instructing Ruth to make herself available for marriage to Boaz, their kinsman redeemer. It's important to understand the concept of the kinsman redeemer here. In Israelite law, a close relative had the responsibility to step in and redeem or buy back property that had been sold due to poverty, and to provide an heir for a deceased relative. This practice ensured the continuation of the family line and the protection of its inheritance. Ruth's response to this daring plan is simple and profound. "I will do whatever you say." Ruth 3:5. Her words echo her earlier pledge of loyalty to Naomi and demonstrate her trust in her mother-in-law's wisdom. This moment is pivotal in Ruth's story. She's no longer just a gleaner in the fields, dependent on the kindness of others. She's taking an active role in securing her future and, by extension, Naomi's. It's a step of faith, trusting in the God of Israel and the customs of her adopted people. As Ruth prepares to carry out this plan, we can imagine her nervousness and anticipation. She's about to approach a man of influence and wealth, putting herself in a vulnerable position. Yet her courage and trust in Naomi's guidance propel her forward. Naomi's plan sets the stage for a midnight encounter that will change the course of Ruth's life. It's a plan born of desperation, yes, but also of hope and faith in God's provision through the customs he established for his people. As the sun sets and Ruth makes her way to the threshing floor, the air is thick with possibility. Will Boaz understand and respond favorably? Will Ruth find the security and belonging she seeks? And how will God work through these circumstances to bring about his greater plan? The stage is set for a dramatic encounter that will test Ruth's courage and Boaz's character, all while showcasing God's providential care for his people. The night air is cool as Ruth approaches the threshing floor, her heart likely pounding with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The scene before her is one of celebration. The harvest is complete and Boaz and his workers are enjoying a feast. Ruth waits patiently in the shadows, observing Boaz as Naomi instructed. As the festivities wind down, Boaz, satisfied and in good spirits, lies down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth seizes this moment. With quiet resolve, she approaches, uncovers his feet and lies down. This act, while potentially scandalous to our modern sensibilities, was Ruth's way of requesting marriage and redemption according to the customs of the time. In the middle of the night, Boaz startles awake. Imagine his surprise to find a woman at his feet. "Who are you?" he asks. Ruth's response is both bold and humble. "I am your servant Ruth," she says. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." Ruth 3:9. This statement is loaded with cultural significance. By asking Boaz to spread his garment over her, Ruth is essentially proposing marriage. She's invoking his responsibility as a kinsman redeemer and expressing her willingness to become his wife. Boaz's response reveals his character and his deep respect for Ruth. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." Ruth 3:10-11. Boaz recognizes Ruth's proposal for what it is, an act of kindness towards Naomi's family line. He's touched that Ruth, a younger woman, would consider him as a husband. His words also reveal that Ruth's reputation in Bethlehem has grown. She's known not just as a foreigner, but as a woman of noble character. However, there's a complication. Boaz, ever the man of integrity, reveals that there is another relative who is a closer kinsman redeemer. He promises Ruth that he will settle the matter in the morning, ensuring that all is done legally and ethically. In a final act of kindness, Boaz sends Ruth home with 6 measures of barley, ensuring she doesn't return to Naomi empty-handed. This gesture serves both as a promise of his intentions and as a practical provision for the 2 women. As dawn breaks and Ruth hurries home, we can imagine the mix of emotions she must have felt: hope, uncertainty, and perhaps a growing affection for Boaz. When she recounts the night's events to Naomi, her mother-in-law's response is telling, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Ruth 3:18. This encounter at the threshing floor is a turning point in the narrative. Ruth's bold action, guided by Naomi's wisdom, has set in motion events that will secure their future. It's a beautiful example of human initiative working in harmony with divine providence. The scene also highlights the character of both Ruth and Boaz. Ruth demonstrates courage, humility, and trust in God's ways. Boaz shows himself to be a man of integrity, kindness, and respect for both the law and Ruth's honor. As the dust settles on this midnight encounter, the stage is set for the final resolution of Ruth's story. Will Boaz be able to redeem Ruth? How will the closer relative respond? And how will God's plan unfold through these human decisions? As the morning sun rises over Bethlehem, Boaz makes his way to the town gate, the center of civic life where legal matters were settled. True to his word, he's determined to resolve the matter of Ruth's redemption without delay. Boaz takes his seat and waits for the closer relative he mentioned to Ruth. When the man appears, Boaz calls him over, along with 10 elders of the town, to serve as witnesses. This scene at the gate is a glimpse into the legal processes of ancient Israel, showcasing the importance of public accountability and communal involvement in personal affairs. Boaz begins by addressing the matter of Naomi's land. Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. Ruth 4:3-4. The closer relative initially agrees to buy the land, seemingly unaware of the full implications. It's then that Boaz reveals the catch. On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. Ruth 4:5. This stipulation changes everything. The closer relative, realizing that redeeming Ruth would potentially jeopardize his own estate, backs out of the deal. He removes his sandal, a customary way of sealing a transaction, and gives Boaz the right to redeem Ruth. Boaz seizes this opportunity with joy and determination. He declares to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Ruth 4:9-10. This moment is the culmination of Ruth's journey of faith and loyalty. Boaz, in redeeming her, is not just fulfilling a legal obligation. He's embracing Ruth fully as his wife, accepting her into the community of Israel, and committing to continue the family line of Elimelech. The people and elders respond with enthusiasm, blessing Boaz and Ruth. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Ruth 4:11-12. This blessing is rich with significance, linking Ruth to the matriarchs of Israel and foreshadowing the important lineage that will come from this union. Boaz and Ruth marry, and soon they are blessed with a son. The women of the town celebrate with Naomi, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Ruth 4:14-15. The child is named Obed, and the book concludes by revealing his significance. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Ruth 4:17. This redemption story, beginning with tragedy and ending in joy, showcases God's providential care. Through Ruth's faithfulness and Boaz's integrity, God brings about not just the restoration of one family, but sets in motion his plan for the lineage of Israel's greatest king, and ultimately, the Messiah himself. The story of Ruth reaches its climax with the union of Ruth and Boaz, a testament to God's providence and faithfulness. After Boaz fulfilled his role as kinsman redeemer, he took Ruth as his wife, sealing their covenant before the elders and all the people of Bethlehem. This marriage was not merely a romantic union, but a powerful symbol of God's redemptive plan. Their wedding day must have been a joyous occasion, filled with celebration and hope. The people of Bethlehem, who had witnessed Ruth's devotion and Boaz's integrity, gathered to bless this union. As it's written in Ruth 4:11-12, then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem." This blessing invoked the memory of the matriarchs of Israel, placing Ruth in the lineage of God's chosen people. Despite her Moabite origins, Ruth was now fully embraced as a daughter of Israel, a remarkable testament to God's inclusive love and the power of faith to transcend cultural boundaries. The marriage of Ruth and Boaz serves as a beautiful picture of Christ's relationship with his church. Just as Boaz redeemed Ruth, Christ has redeemed us. Their union reminds us of the intimate and covenantal nature of our relationship with God, calling us to a deeper understanding of his love and our response to it. The marriage of Ruth and Boaz was soon blessed with the birth of a son, Obed. This joyous event marked a dramatic turn in Ruth's story, transforming her from a childless widow to a mother and securing her place in the lineage of Israel's greatest kings. The significance of Obed's birth cannot be overstated. As we read in Ruth 4:14-15, then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." This child was seen as a gift not just to Ruth and Boaz, but to Naomi as well. Obed became the source of renewed hope and joy for Naomi, who had once returned to Bethlehem empty and bitter. Through Ruth's faithfulness and God's providence, Naomi's emptiness was filled, and her bitterness turned to sweetness. But Obed's birth had implications far beyond the immediate family. Unbeknownst to Ruth, her son would become the grandfather of King David, and through this lineage, the ancestor of Jesus Christ himself. In Matthew's genealogy of Jesus, we find Ruth's name alongside those of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a Moabite woman given a place of honor in the family tree of the Messiah. Ruth's legacy therefore extends far beyond her own lifetime. Her story of faith, loyalty, and redemption became a powerful testimony to God's faithfulness and his ability to use the most unlikely individuals to fulfill his divine plan. Through Ruth, we see how God can take our broken stories and weave them into his grand narrative of redemption. Moreover, Ruth's inclusion in the lineage of Christ serves as a powerful reminder of God's heart for all nations. As the Apostle Paul would later write in Galatians 3:28, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Ruth's story foreshadows this great truth, showing that God's plan of salvation extends to all who put their faith in him, regardless of their national or ethnic background. The story of Ruth, though ancient, resonates with timeless wisdom and profound lessons for our modern lives. As we reflect on her journey, we find a wealth of spiritual insights that can guide and inspire us in our own walk of faith. First and foremost, Ruth's unwavering loyalty teaches us the power of committed relationships. Her famous declaration to Naomi, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God," as recorded in Ruth 1:16, exemplifies a depth of devotion that challenges us to examine our own commitments. In a world where loyalty often seems fleeting, Ruth's steadfastness reminds us of the beauty and strength found in faithful relationships, both with God and with others. Ruth's story also illuminates the virtue of hard work and initiative. When faced with poverty and uncertainty in Bethlehem, Ruth didn't wait for opportunity to knock. She ventured into the fields to glean. Her diligence caught the attention of Boaz, who praised her, saying, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before." Ruth 2:11. This teaches us that faith and action go hand in hand, echoing the words of James 2:17. "So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." Furthermore, Ruth's life demonstrates the transformative power of faith. By choosing to follow the God of Israel, Ruth's entire trajectory changed. She went from being a widow in a foreign land to becoming an ancestor of King David and ultimately of Jesus Christ. This remarkable transition reminds us that when we align our lives with God's will, He can use us in ways we never imagined. Ruth's story also teaches us about the beauty of redemption. Through Boaz, the kinsman redeemer, we see a picture of how God redeems our lives from emptiness and gives us a hope and a future. This foreshadows the ultimate redemption we find in Christ, who, as Ephesians 1:7 tells us, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace." Lastly, Ruth's inclusion in the lineage of Christ underscores God's heart for all nations. Her story challenges any notion of ethnic or cultural superiority, showing that God's plan of salvation is open to all who put their faith in him. This prefigures the Great Commission and reminds us of our call to share the good news with all people, regardless of their background. As we conclude our exploration of Ruth's remarkable journey, it's crucial to understand her enduring significance in biblical history. Ruth's story, though brief, occupies a unique and pivotal place in the grand narrative of God's redemptive plan. Ruth stands as a beacon of faith in the turbulent times of the Judges, a period often characterized by the refrain, "In those days Israel had no king, everyone did as they saw fit." Judges 21:25. In contrast to the moral decay of her era, Ruth's unwavering commitment to God and her mother-in-law shines brightly, offering hope and demonstrating that individual faithfulness can have far-reaching consequences. Her place in biblical history is further cemented by her role in the lineage of King David and ultimately Jesus Christ. As Matthew's Gospel opens with the genealogy of Jesus, we find Ruth's name among the few women mentioned, alongside Tamar, Rahab, and Mary. This inclusion is no mere coincidence, but a powerful statement of God's inclusive grace and his ability to use the marginalized and the outsider to fulfill his purposes. Ruth's story bridges the gap between the era of the Judges and the monarchy of Israel. Her great-grandson David would become Israel's greatest king and a man after God's own heart. Through this lineage, Ruth becomes an unexpected link in the chain of God's covenant promises, stretching from Abraham to David and ultimately to Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Moreover, the book of Ruth provides a beautiful glimpse into the concept of the kinsman redeemer, a role fulfilled by Boaz. This foreshadows Christ's role as our ultimate redeemer, who, like Boaz, was not obligated to redeem us, but chose to do so out of love. As Ephesians 1:7 reminds us, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace. Ruth's story also stands as a testament to God's providence and sovereign care. From Ruth's chance encounter with Boaz to the birth of Obed, we see God's guiding hand orchestrating events to fulfill his greater purpose. This narrative reminds us that even in our darkest moments, God is at work, weaving our stories into his grand design. In the tapestry of biblical history, Ruth's thread may seem small, but it connects major themes of God's redemptive work. Her story embodies the truth found in 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. As we reflect on Ruth's place in biblical history, we're reminded that our own stories, however ordinary they may seem, can be used by God in extraordinary ways. Ruth's legacy challenges us to live with unwavering faith, to embrace God's redemptive work in our lives, and to trust that our faithfulness today may have implications far beyond what we can see or imagine. In the end, Ruth's story is not just a tale of personal triumph, but a testament to the faithfulness of God, the power of his redemptive love, and the unexpected ways he works to bring about his purposes in human history. May her example inspire us to trust God more deeply, love more faithfully, and live in anticipation of how our own stories might fit into God's ongoing work of redemption in the world.